Hi everyone, this is Erkan Ali on the Beyond Mainstream podcast, and in line with my commitment to have more variety of interesting guests, I'd like to welcome Susie Tate to the programme. Susie, it's great to have you here. For the benefit of our audience, would you mind just giving us a little background on you and why would I have asked you to join me in conversation? Far away.
Why indeed? It's a great question. I'm just a normal human. My name is Susie Tate. I'm 41 and I live in Bath in the southwest of England. And I've spent this past year, like many other people, kind of looking into and researching what's going on in the world currently. And I guess I can't remember how long we've been connected on Facebook, but that's how you and I have met. And work-wise, I am a dancer, dance teacher, maths tutor and massage therapist, all self-employed. Yeah.
So what attracted me to you, what I noticed was that you were doing these live updates to camera. And by your own admission, it's not really what you like doing, it's not what you feel comfortable doing, and yet you are doing it and you're speaking, I would say, your truth, you're sharing your experience of this, especially since March 2020, about the world and how it's changing. And right now, how would you sum up what's on your mind about what's going on at the moment?
Oh, what a good question. How long have you got? I think what I'm discovering is so interesting because I come from a family of two fiercely politically, interested, researched parents who do not share my views on the current world. In fact, they couldn't be more polar opposite from mine. And actually, I grew up, totally not realizing that there was an alternative option out there. I trusted my parents and their beliefs. And it was only really when I started looking into my own personal journey and wounds from childhood. I do think that once you know yourself well, in turn, it's like the blinkers have come off in relation to the world. That's my experience anyway. So in 2014, I started work with a therapist to dig deep into my own childhood trauma. And simultaneously learning about myself, I also felt like my blinkers had come off in relation to the world. And over the last 6-7 years, I feel like, obviously none of us can know for sure. There are no facts, only beliefs. The only things I know are in relation to myself and people I know well. But I feel I'm a feeler rather than a thinker. Well, I'm both, of course, but I'm an instincts person, and my instincts tell me that how the world is portrayed is not accurate.
Well, I think we've been very much conditioned out of our intuition and our feelings and our innate wisdom for a more Western notion of what education is, information transfer. I call the education system a system of abuse and indoctrination. And so where we were all happy and going along in our lives and exploring the world on our terms, we're suddenly told that it's like this: sit down, get up, stand up, do as you're told. And then obviously the childhood traumas was all part of setting us up for how we think the world works, and definitely. Unquestionably so. So one of the things I noticed about you is that you're not shy in questioning and challenging.
No, I'm not.
No,
I never have been, actually. But it's interesting because my parents are such role models to me. They're by no means perfect, but of course nobody is. It didn't occur to me that I was permitted to question them, and so I just blindly followed their beliefs. But of course, that was without questioning that they could be wrong. So I grew up with that programming really from my parents. I've always questioned everything outside of my home, but actually it's been in questioning my own life, my own childhood, my own experiences that I've been able to see and kind of let go of that really fierce loyalty I've had to my parents and their beliefs. I now think for myself. Which is a very conscious.
Sorry, remind me, where were we?
So I was just telling you that I was kind of, because of loyalty towards my parents and their beliefs, it didn't occur to me to question the world. And now we're in a situation where my sister is still very much aligned with my parents' thinking, and I'm the black sheep as always, but I don't mind. I'm comfortable in that role.
Yeah, and for me, that, I mean, this is what I share with people when I do courses and training and all sorts of things. I say to them, well, I've been kicking against it since I can recall. I always said, yeah, but, or why is it like that? And I don't, and part of my experience was one of, nationalism, or, that I'm Turkish and my blood is Turkish, and this whole idea of, being part of a specific race that was different to other races. And that paradigm was one that I really challenged growing up. And I can't recall in my experience a time where I didn't challenge everybody. The teachers, the parents, the cousins, the uncles, the aunties. It was always like, well, that's, I just had, a self-freedom to work things out for myself. But what I can see, and especially when I look around at the world the way it is now, where people are literally walking up to a clinic and getting an experimental injection that hasn't been approved for something that has a fantastical recovery rate. Your chances of getting COVID and surviving are pretty much 100%.
I know.
And people are like just walking straight into these places and rolling up and getting injected with really no understanding of the implications, not only of the health and the validity of the what's in the, if you like, in the veil, but also the ongoing ramifications of injection passports, vaccine passports, and what that will bring into play. That doesn't seem to occur to people. They haven't really considered that. I mean, so where are you at with this conversation? Obviously, I've got an idea because I've been watching what you're saying. You've been mainly focusing, from what I can tell, around the health impact on those who haven't vaccinated.
Yeah, well, that's it. I go very much with the flow of what's happening. I search very little for information. I have a lot of friends who spend hours and hours and hours researching, going down rabbit holes. And I really have learned not to do that because, it's very possible to get paranoid and misled and stop trusting your instincts. So actually, I do very little research. And I find, because of my spiritual beliefs, I believe that everything that I need will come and find me anyway. And people send me numerous links to this, that, and the other, and I just very instinctively know what to trust and what not to trust. I sometimes get it wrong because I'm human, but on the whole, if I remain calm, well-rested, well-fed, eating the right foods, meditate, then I'm very much within my body and able to trust what comes my way. And I just feel very led by instinct. So I'm currently on the road to looking at the people who have not had the jab and the impacts that jabbed people being near to them are having. And I just received information this morning from a friend, as I was discussing before we went on air, that her son has, she's sent pictures, which I posted on my Facebook, of very puffy face and a rash all over his torso. And he's not had the jab himself, but his partner's parents have, his friends have, his colleagues have, and he's been spending a lot of time with them. And whilst we can never know for sure that the jab or the poisoning from the jab, whatever it is, has caused that, it just feels at the moment, and I'm not someone to live in fear, but I feel right now like being quite cautious of whom I choose to be around.
Okay, so from what I understand, there's around over 20 million people or more, as the government is telling us. Not that I trust that, information, but a large proportion have vaccinated. I know people personally. I don't know anyone who's died from COVID-19.
Me neither.
But I do know a lot of people who have been injected. And I say, why? Are you aware it's experimental? Are you aware the recovery, all this stuff? And they're like, well, I want to travel. I want to get back to normal. I haven't actually heard anyone say
back to normal.
Yeah, like they want to. So you win you've been held under duress. You've been coerced into a position of lockdown, which never works. You've been enforced to wear nappies on your face and capture whatever it is you capture on the front of your face, restrict your oxygen.
Bacterial, whatever it is, yeah.
Right.
All sorts of problems.
And, probably half the UK businesses may never recover. Who knows? I did hear at the beginning of this year that the Federation of Small Business said that 250,000 businesses will never come back. Meanwhile, big corporations are running riot with massive super profits. So we have entered this era of some kind of apartheid, because you can't undo the vaccine, can you? It's not just a physical choice; it's also a mental. I was on a call with someone the other day, and they said, before we start, it was someone I didn't know, Susie, and she said to me, "Are you having the vaccine?" I went, "Absolutely not." She said, "Great, let's talk."
I now know your level of sanity.
Yeah, because it's like, if I'm thinking about it because I want to go Burma this year. You'd be like, whoa, is this someone that I can really?
It's like a benchmark for sanity and continuing a conversation.
Look, I hate to say it, but I've got friends, relatives, all sorts of people. I'm rapidly losing respect.
Yeah, I always have probably more empathy than is helpful. Certainly in the past, I have learnt boundaries, but I remain, because I have to say that, back in 2015, only, what are we now, 6-7 years ago, I like to think I wouldn't have gone along with all of this and I would have sniffed out the lies, but I still believed then that what was in the media was the truth. So I'm actually only a few steps ahead, if you want to look at it in that way, of friends and family. So I remain really empathetic, and because I know these people so well, they've been in my life for so many years, decades, some of them, I also know their personal wounds, and I therefore understand that when one is masked or blinkered personally, one in turn is also blinkered to the world. So I get it. And and when you know as much psychology as I do from my own journey and from just being fascinated by people for 41 years, you also know that when people react in a certain way to your questions, that they've been triggered. And anyone who gets emotionally heightened by just a question, for example, what if you're wrong? Are you sure that you're right? When someone flies off the handle in relation to that question, you know for sure that they are not sure. Because if someone says to me, because I can't prove that spirituality is real and that all of these connections I've discovered within my life I have no peer-reviewed evidence to back up that claim. But if somebody laughs at my belief or questions me, I'm so secure in it that any sort of negativity or criticism or disbelief just washes over me, because I'm secure in my belief.
And that's probably taken a lot of work, time, effort, consideration, a few dead ends. Like you said, I get it wrong. I mean, one of the things I said early on in this thing was that, give yourself the two rights to get it wrong and change your mind, because you can't be so sure that you can't reevaluate or take a different approach. The other thing that I have been want to encourage through the podcast is ways that for us to unravel this or to evolve the situation to our benefit as opposed to our detriment.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been challenging myself is to ask myself, what's missing in me with this person right now that I could bring to the fore to help them. Because it's easy to vilify someone or sheepscape them or call them a normie and all that stuff. And I think that's fair. You know what? I think that's fair game. If you're going to do those things, then you're open to that kind of criticism. But it doesn't get us very far.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't get us very far. But I get it. I get why we would use that language. Or on the alternative side is, you're a conspiracy theorist and you're so cynical. I've had every accusation. I'm sure you have.
I've had some choice hilarious. The thing is, the things I get called are so funny because they're not actually insults, they're just descriptions of who I am. My favourite one from last summer was, oh, you're just like some kind of crazy religious cult leader. And I was like, oh, what a compliment. It's lovely to be.
Where are all the members?
But also a Facebook friend, I can't remember. I've got all sorts of random people. I can't remember how we became connected. I used to be much more open of adding people and letting people in until I realised there's so many fake accounts out there, and I'm much more scrupulous now. But I had one guy recently who said to me, all he could find to say was, you silly, white, middle-class, privileged woman. And I was just like, well, that's kind of an accurate description of me. Okay, I'm not insulted.
How dare you?
Yeah, exactly. It's really funny because I am such a sort of patient, kind, generous person, people have nothing else.
No, you can't. Yeah. It comes to a point where I've had that, going back to what you said about what if you're wrong. And I said to people, I would love to be wrong. And there's nothing more fulfilling for me for you all to laugh at me and go, see, you silly Billy, you had it all wrong all along. And I say, yeah, you know what? Yeah.
Great, yes, please.
Fair cop, no problem with that. So in terms of, so there's, what I'm encouraging in the podcast as well, Susie, is that to deal with the facts, to deal with the reality. I know you use the word belief. I generally don't use that word. I'll explain how I use it. But for me, there is reality in the world. Like there's this glass is a expression of reality that's holding the water, and there's a functionality and a reality to it. And I don't have to believe there's water in there. There's water in there, and it's there's all sort of interim and tests I can do.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
The way I lean into belief is like this. Let's say you and I were stuck on a high mountain and the blizzard's coming in and we're running out of water, and we have to get down, otherwise we're going to be in trouble, we might not make it. I would believe in that we could do that. That would be, I'd have belief beyond the reality that we can achieve that, and regardless that the reality is very uncomfortable and probably quite dangerous and we've been in a vulnerable position. But what I like to do is get people as close to the reality of the situation and then diagnose that and understand it and maybe project, well, if it carries on in this way, where will we end up? And if we want it not to end up there, then what do we need to do now? So on that note, so for example, if everyone gets vaccinated and everyone's got vaccine passports and we're going to this social credit kind of culture, those restrictions are something that I definitely don't want to see happen. So how do we today make that difference, make that impact, to make as many people aware of these implications? For example, using the vaccine passport as an example of that, without it being a very negative kind of, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, or you're just doom and gloom. I used to get a lot. People say, no, you're just doom and gloom. And I say, well, yes, the idea of a vaccine.
Realistic.
Yeah, exactly. It is a reality that's being presented. Now, a year ago, you'd been called a conspiracy theorist, talking about vaccine passports and being tracked and can't go anywhere and do it. Now, they're openly telling you it's a great idea. And they spent something like £40 billion in England to track and trace. So anyway, so how would you, the question for you is, how do we develop a powerful relationship to the realities of the possible consequences of what's coming and still maintain a very functional, non-bitter, non-cynical and miserable lifestyle?
You're a great question asker. It's really refreshing for me, actually, because I'm such an interrogator in a nice way, and people rarely ask me questions. I think because I post a lot of stuff on my Facebook, people feel like they know me, but actually, of course, that's a smokescreen. I reveal very little about myself. I'm a reasonably private person, but actually, if someone asks me something, I'm more than happy to be completely open and honest. Well, as open and honest as I choose to be on a particular occasion is a choice. My answer to your question is that, and you've sort of covered it when you were talking about your mountain, is that we need to believe that the projected reality is not going to happen. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't actually think it's possible to look into the future, because that would disempower us of any choices or changes we make in ourselves, and, you know, the ripple effect of that now. So my personal belief is that, and it sounds very simplistic, but I believe that everything will be okay. I don't know when, I don't know how, but I feel so strongly and positively and optimistically, with a heavy dose of realism involved, that we can change the course of the plan, that, you know, if enough people shift their belief system towards that optimistic, we can change this, then we'll make it happen.
A very short answer. But solid. I get it. And I in my own confession, I've been in very, you know, because I've been researching, you know, I'd say I always have done, you know, and I tell people since the age of 14, I've always been involved in alternative information, non-mainstream. I've always dug out things that most people didn't know. And about 2.5 years ago, I hit quite a rock bottom of what I thought was coming. Now, I wouldn't have said...
You're not alone. I mean, not me personally, but many people I know would share that.
Yeah, I mean, after the last, you know, the quantitative easing and the whole credit crunch, I was calling it back then. And I remember my wife saying to me, "You will be right. At some point, it will happen." And I said, "We're going to see a collapse." Unlike anything, not because I'm so clever, but when you look at the situation, the amount of debt, the amount of the way we consume, the stories and narratives that are being run through mainstream consciousness, whether that's the environment or whether it's, you know, disease and health and all the things we're told, there's so much inversion. And if you do any amount of, you know, minimum amounts of real research, obviously, if you're not a researcher, you don't always know where to go, where to look, and it's massive out there. But there are some fundamental principles, and what I found in the mainstream narrative, you know, in that world that they painted us, there's a lot that's left out. There's a huge amount that's just omitted. Yeah. You know, and that omission is something that people that are mainly informed by that mainstream don't know, that they don't know there's so much of the puzzle missing.
I think that's such a key thing. They don't know that they don't know. Because, and I was there too. It didn't occur to me that there was stuff outside of here. And so again, because I remember how that felt, I do have great empathy and understanding with people who are just like, well, somebody actually said to me yesterday on one of my posts, if all of this stuff was true, we'd have read about it or heard about it on the radio. And you think, well, no.
Yeah. Or the other one is, well, who are these people? And you're like, yeah, you know, it's quite a innocent question. Yeah. You know, like, you know, who is they, Erkan? I've had that for years. Who is they?
Yeah, it's a great question.
You know, and it's like, and you just look at me and think, where do you start? You know, where do you start?
And the truth is, we don't really know who they are, because, you know, you have all of these messengers that we shoot in the guise of, you know, Bill Gates, you know, Matt Hancock, whoever else. I'm really terrible with the names because I'm not a researcher and I'm not interested in celebrities. But, you know, they're really just the front men and women for a much darker, you know, we don't have the names and faces for the people who are probably leading all of this stuff. But also, having said that, I don't like, because in my last live video to Facebook, I started by addressing Facebook because they're so closely monitoring my account, and I'm now not allowed to make comments that my friends can make. I get instantly slapped on the wrist, and my friends have practiced writing every expletive under the sun on statuses and not even getting a warning, whereas I'm on the top of the naughty list. And I started by thanking Facebook for its continued attention and interest in me, and also said, you know, essentially we're shooting the messenger, but at the same time, Mark Zuckerberg, anyone else who's involved in this is complicit and should be held accountable for choosing to be involved, for choosing to be a sellout, basically.
Yeah, I think it's vast. It's a broad spectrum The more I've looked at it, you look at education, you look at the monetary system, you look at the legal system, you look at pharma, you look at the military, you look at local government, you look at central government, you look at, just how you ask someone, what do you know about the birth certificate? Just your registration of live birth and registration of you as a, and for the most part, people don't have a clue. It's riddled in the language, mortgage, government.
Yeah.
Was it entertainment programming? Just if you really start to look at the language, it's actually, I think the Matrix does a wonderful artistic way of explaining that the whole thing is a construct. Yeah. And then when you see it, it's kind of everywhere.
Yes, you can't unsee it once you've seen it. And I think one other thing that just came into my mind as you were talking there was this thing of saving face and being seen to be right and pride and ego, because so much of all of this is about people being too proud to admit they could be wrong. That's certainly my experience with my friends and family. And I get laughed at just because I've asked a question by not even, because I continue to say I know nothing. This is what I believe, and I know that we might have different feelings on what that word means, but even by saying, have you thought about the fact that you could be wrong about this? That people laugh when they feel humiliated, and it's interesting on social media. I use social media a lot. I socialise more online than I do in real life, which might sound a bit sad, but that's been the reality of the last year. Having been very social in the real world previously. But I just find it very difficult to spend time with my friends and family in real life currently, as many of us do. But it's also, I can see in these people who I know well that they cannot admit that they might be wrong. And I'm in a fortunate position because I'm not well researched. And I've never been that interested in politics. As I say, I'm not interested in celebrities. Who are these people? I don't know them. I don't trust them. It's like they've spent so many years in their heads indoctrinated, researching, knowledge, as far as they were aware. For my parents, part of me, I almost feel like I don't want them to know the truth. I feel like they might have some kind of breakdown knowing that 70 years have been a lie.
Well, I think that's part of the, tell a lie big enough and long enough, and we know that how that goes. But the cognitive dissonance, or the willingness to realise that everything you see the books, don't you? Everything you thought was true is a lie.
Yeah.
These statements sound, incredibly fantastical. They do. But then when you actually examine the way you think the world works and how it does work, you realise that actually it does work in very different ways to what you may consider it to be the case. I think ultimately under all of that is a massive betrayal, and people cannot handle that level of, if you like, fragmentation. That level. It's like cracking the vase.
Yeah.
And I'm sure people don't have a perfect view of the world. You'd ask anyone, do you trust politicians? Is the news always right? Yeah, everyone's got conspiracies. They don't believe everything they're told. Nobody does. We all have our doubts, but are we willing to really question it and then really work it out on our own terms? And I think that's the thing that I think I want to encourage.
Yeah.
Is people's innate understanding. I call it innate wisdom, innate genius. The innate knowing is exactly what you're saying. Is what you believe and what you choose to, intuitively understand about what is happening. However that's coming in, whether it's through our 5 sense reality, whether it's at the level of energy, at the level of, all these other levels of who knows, right? I'm not. But I'm sure there's many different levels of different dimensions that we're being influenced by.
Yeah, definitely.
And sometimes you're being informed or picking up resonances. I mean, yesterday I was speaking with Clive Picard, and he was saying it's resonances. It's the energies, who we get attracted to, what are we attracting into our experience.
Yeah.
A level But I think that's very powerful principles that we don't really work with in the West very well.
No, definitely not.
You know, so your plan at the moment is to do more videos, and I think you've got one later on today.
I don't have a plan.
That's ambitious.
Planning. So I've written a blog this morning, which is about control, and I'm explaining how in my blog I explain about how I used to be a real control freak and how most people. And as a massage therapist, I will get to your. I'm going on a road to answering your question and sort of circular scenic route. As a massage therapist, one of the first questions I ask new clients is, do you have any mental illness, or as far as you're aware? And when people say no, I have a red flag, because actually we all have something, whether it's a low-level anxiety or whatever. And if you don't yet know that you have something, that is a concern. And I don't say this, I mean, I'm quite open about sharing it generally, but in the moment with the client, I don't say, oh dear, I just say, and just log that. Because actually, if that person hasn't yet admitted to themselves that they have, low mood or anxiety or control and obsessive thing, because we all have something, absolutely every one of us. Nobody has had a perfect existence in childhood. It's just not possible, because we're all brought up by people who also have their own wounds. And even with the most sort of aware parenting, nobody's perfect. We're all human. So where was I going with that? So anyway, in this blog, I talk about the fact that I used to be a real control freak. And up until the age of 31, I was a high-functioning, severely messed up person, but I didn't know this. And so whenever I say to my friends, would you ever think about exploring counselling? And they say, well, no, because I'm fine. And anyone who claims to be fine is just not fine. And it means they just don't know themselves yet. And what people don't understand, people get very scared about the idea of talking therapy. And all I say to them is, it's not, someone's not going to be inside your head manipulating you. It's nothing like that. You're never going to say or reveal anything you don't choose to reveal. It's about getting to know yourself better. And I had the most wonderful therapist who had the exact same birthday as me, which was brilliant. So we were very in tune. She knew me better than I knew myself. She knew within moments of meeting me what the root cause of my issues was. But had she told me that in the first session, I'd have said, well, no, that's not right, left probably. And she was so experienced and brilliant that she knew she had to wait for me to figure it out. And 5 years later, I did 5 years of weekly therapy. It did kind of reduce to fortnightly in the end, but I was so in my bubble of existence and functionality that I didn't know anything was wrong.
No, I think having been involved in coaching and empowering people for quite a long, at least 2 decades now, I look at myself as someone that helps, taps people towards where they want to go. You can't take people there. You can't make it. I've tried all that. You can't.
It doesn't work.
I think you've got to work with what you've got to help people get where they need to go. As much as the time is of essence at the moment. And the thing that I've also been thinking about is, in terms of damage, psychological, spiritual, physical, since March 2020, the amount of negative, fear-driven, we've talked about MK Ultra, mind control techniques, who knows what else is applied psychology. There's the adults like us, but then there's the whole generation of children, including, I've got 2 daughters, one's 13, the other one's coming on to 17.
Okay.
And I just the lockdown effects it's had on them, the effect it's had on their parents and the culture, the wider cultures. I really am, I have a very high concern for what in 20 years' time, what's our society going to look like? What kind of a fallout is this going to produce?
And you're right to have that concern. I get quite angry, and I'm someone who finds it very hard to access anger, because I spent 31 years not being angry when I probably should have been. So I still find it very difficult to access anger. Gin helps.
It lubricates you up a bit.
in moderation. At my last live video, I had a gin on the go, because it kind of brings out the truth in me. So obviously just one. Alcohol drinking not recommended. Disclaimer. But I feel very angry with the level of apathy present in many of my friends who are my age, in their 40s. Most of my friends have children either at primary school or secondary or both. And when I talk to them about the psychological, emotional, physical impacts of wearing a mask every day, as our teenagers in the UK are being asked to at the moment, and is being asked to, it's not forced, but again, no one wants to be told off or get it wrong, or God forbid, have to actually think for themselves. And they just lie to themselves about the impacts that that's having on their children. And of course, these children have been brought up by parents who don't know themselves, and hence those children aren't honest with their parents. They're honest with me. I have many of my friends' children who have my number and are on my Instagram, and I'm very careful with what I share there because I know that. But actually, they, what do they say? Be the person you needed when you were a child. And I try and be that person to my friends' children and whomever wants to be. And I've taught a lot. I've got lots of sort of children and people in their 20s now who I have taught over my 12-year teaching career in schools and colleges. And actually, what adults forget is that children want to please and are fiercely loyal to their parents. So it's highly unlikely that they're going to raise their concerns in relation to how they feel about wearing a mask and having that horrible thing up their nose, because they want to get it right. And unless a dynamic has been established between the child and parent that the child feels safe to be honest, then they are just going to blindly go along with this. And also another really important thing is that children are in shock at the moment. They're not necessarily expressing themselves in a way that they might, and I hope they will need to in order to recover from this in the coming years and decades even. The impact of this last year on our children, young and teenage, will be felt and experienced for years to come. And people who haven't done the work on themselves just don't know that yet.
Yeah, I really have a major concern on that.
You should. It's right to be concerned. People who are not concerned are in denial.
Yeah, definitely. Susie, we're kind of coming up to our time. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Is it okay for people to get in touch with you or find you?
Yeah, of course. My Facebook is Susie Tate, SUSIE, and then Tate, TATE, and I'm also on Instagram, Susie F Tate. If anyone does want to add me on Facebook, just send me a little message first to let me know where you found me, because I'm getting a lot of friend requests, and many of them are bots and evil people trying to sabotage my account from the inside. So yeah, anyone's welcome, but I just need to know who you are first.
Well, listen, I love the fact you do the live updates. Keep doing them.
So 8 p.m. tonight is I'm doing a co-hosting of.
Hopefully I'll have this out shortly. The only thing is the upload time's a little bit slow, but as soon as it's live, I'll send you the link and then you will know it's live. Appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me. Our viewers, if you're enjoying the Beyond Mainstream podcast, please like and share it. Please comment, feedback. You can find us on Facebook on Beyond Mainstream, and you can find us on YouTube, where you're probably watching this. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful day, and don't give up hope. Keep believing. Take care. Bye.